I'm Jennifer, your marketing and innovation partner for growth. Today, my special guest is Chris Bryce. Hey, Chris,
How's
welcome
it
to
going?
my virtual studio.
Amazing. Thanks for having me.
And Chris runs a digital agency which does website, e-commerce, and mobile apps. And you guys build elegant and world-class websites, digital properties.
I've been running a digital agency for going on 25 years now, since around the time the internet started becoming a thing. We have a bit of a juxty nature in that half of our practice is design and style, and the other half is software engineering and systems integration. And what we love doing is building more complicated websites and mobile apps that
Yeah.
usually involve a lot of business integrations. And we're both concerned about the presentation of stuff and also how things integrate to make businesses run better.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
My clients and people who I work with, I see more and more, like when they grow, when they get more complicated, they're either they don't have a digital strategy, digital plan, and their digital, we call it assets, like are all over the place. And sometimes they don't know how to, where to start. And sometimes they see the symptoms, but they don't know like whether they need to do something. So, today our topic will cover like what the digital assets are, what we mean by them. Let's discuss about some limiting beliefs that can limit them, from growing like at the speed or at the direction that they can grow into. And my insights are with those business leaders, how are usually more valuable than what. So let's talk about how as well. And let's talk about how to move the lever to monetization.
Cool.
Sounds
All
good.
right. Yeah.
So, Chris, I will get you started on digital assets. Today's theme is about aligning digital assets to your growth. So, what are the digital assets? What are we talking about?
Well, good idea to define that. And digital assets usually come in two flavors. There's kind of the large assets, which could be anything to do with your technology stack, whether that's the tools and systems that are managing the business from ERP, CRM, marketing stack. These days, cybersecurity is really important, and you essentially have within your organization policies to manage all of this stuff. And those come in the forms of different bits and pieces of technology. There's also kind of the presentation and marketing technology, I guess, suite, which could be websites or the way you communicate with folks, depending on what kind of business you have. And then I guess you could refer to digital assets being kind of the micro bits of information that you manage digitally across your brand. So that could be your images and your video and your infographics, and copy even is essentially a digital asset as well. So how do you kind of keep those in an organized way so they can be called upon when you need them? How do you name them? How do you have policies around when to use them? Who owns kind of different bits and pieces of that infrastructure as well? So yeah, I think those are kind of what we're talking about today.
Yeah. Because to marketers, there are owned assets, right? Like your websites, your, the content, the posts you put out in your social media. So there are owned and there are earned. Some of the content and some of your distributors will distribute for you. And some people will comment or on your content. That's the piece that you earned. And you earn a spot from somebody else, and there are paid content as well. You pay for advertising and stuff like that. Yeah, I just wanted to comment on that part. And in your practice, like what are the common limiting beliefs that you see that hold people back?
Well, I guess there's several kind of mindsets that we encounter that may be defined as limiting. One is the inability to resource getting things done. So the belief that the vision isn't currently achievable with time or budget or people. Also, there's a little bit of a limit in an understanding of what could be. So curiosity, sometimes there's a mindset where things just can't be done, and they're unable to extend beyond, what is possible. I think with the modern tooling these days, including AI and personalization and just the different suites of tech, small teams can get a lot done. So that's a good note to kind of break some of that limitation.
So when it comes to digital, it doesn't have to be like enterprise level. There are digital strategies basically for every size.
Mhm.
Is that
For
is
sure,
that
yeah.
true?
There could be a mom and pop dry cleaner down the street,
Yeah.
and they definitely need a digital strategy. And to your point, across paid, earned, owned, created media, and how do you get people aware of the product or service that you're selling and bring them along that journey to becoming a customer, essentially.
Yeah. Cool. So the limiting beliefs, some situations where we are not aware of our symptoms, or what would you say are the symptoms that business owners or leadership, they need to pay attention to? Like, okay, when you see those things happening, that you need to think about, I need to do something in my digital strategy. Or what are the symptoms or signals that I need to maybe move forward to make my business future proof? Because digital, these days it's table stake, right? It's not nice to have,
Mhm.
because every
Yeah,
business is almost digital business.
for sure. Really good points. I think maybe there's a couple ways of looking at that. One of those aspects is, as an entrepreneur, part of the attributes of being one is typically the ability to just sense what's going on. So as an entrepreneur, you want to pay attention to what your instinct is telling you. So there's kind of these soft subjective cues that you just know something isn't right. Um, Arguably more importantly, there are KPIs or some kind of metrics in place so you can get signals early. So if you're checking your P&L at a regular frequency, or your bank accounts, or the number of customers, or whatever the KPIs are relevant to your business. So if you're a small business, it could be the amount of people that have come in the door every day. If you're a larger enterprise, they're kind of larger trends and large accumulations of data that are kind of leveling up to kind of signaling that scorecards haven't been met, whether that's sales or finance or productivity from your workforce. So there's a lot of indicators that things are going well and not well, but it's often overlooked to set up those scorecards and enforce the population of that data so you do get those signals back so you can get an early warning sign, essentially.
So instinct and scorecard, those two are great points. While you were talking about those two things, I was witnessing other symptoms from my peers or, in my circle, is when you have, say, digital, we call it stuff because they're not organized all over the place. When you grow, right, sometimes you have landing pages. You build up one landing page and there's no plan, no consistency, nothing aligns to your brand, and you build one after another. It feels very ad hoc, but over time it builds up. And also websites, because we can build so many micro websites, but nothing aligns to a holistic brand experience. Because one website, it doesn't feel like people interact with your brand. Those are the symptoms that I'm seeing basically all over the place. And you feel that comes to the instinct part, to your point, is you feel like you're kind of slow because everybody else feels like they are faster. That instinct you can feel, right? Something's not right with all those things that you're doing if you can chain them together.
Yeah,
On a
and
digital
I've noticed out there in the land of entrepreneurs that um, there's a lot of social media and media in general that doesn't necessarily value or create a safe space around things not going right. So if you get up in the morning and you scroll through social or Reddit or wherever you do your viewing, and especially LinkedIn, where people are, presenting themselves as successful and this is working and try doing that. That's great to celebrate, but along with that, especially for an entrepreneur, there's a lot of curveballs along the way, and not everything goes right. And if you're unable to be able to communicate that to your peers, you're not getting feedback and insights on how to improve that, but you can also start to feel isolated. So I think just being honest and upfront about things when your signals are going off is really important, and kind of getting back out of the culture of kind of success culture, which I think is kind of weird and doesn't really do a whole lot of people a lot of good. So that'd be kind of my thoughts around that, as to, if you think things are going wrong, let people know soon so you can get some feedback and some help.
Yeah, yeah, those are good points.
Yeah.
And I'm also thinking some businesses, they come from very traditional background. They're not digital first, but sometimes you need to ask yourself, what if? Or you view your business from the perspective of a digital first company, and what changes would you implement immediately? So those are the questions that can prompt you to go forward. Is that right?
Yeah, it seems to be accurate. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We just talk about limiting beliefs, and we talk about symptoms. Once you know you need to do something, then how would you start? Like where to start?
Mm.
Can
Well,
you
I think,
provide some tips for our audience?
yeah, and everyone has a different way, of course. My recommendation is to write it down, whether that's on a piece of paper or get your team together and get everyone's input on, let's say we're focusing on things that aren't working. Um, we just get everything out on a Kanban board or a Figma board somewhere. And it's like, okay, here's a whole bunch of stuff, because time's gone by and we, may not be shining lights all around everywhere as far as how our systems are going. And then we have a bunch of stuff that isn't ideal, perhaps. And then we, simply we run our business on EOS, which provides some great tools for this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
Thank you for that tip.
yeah, anything that needs to be discussed is just an issue. So we have an issues board, and no matter what, every week we discuss the issues, and the issues are kind of defined in detail. We talk about what's the root of the issues, which is often not quite what the issue is itself. And then we identify solutions for the issues and assign it to someone. And often is the case where that issue just can't be dealt with for a variety of reasons. It could be resourcing, it could be unclarity, it could be being blocked by somewhere else. But along with that, I think it's important to realize that you only have so much time between you or your team, depending on the size of your business, to get stuff done. So instead of adding pressure and overloading the expectations of the team to get more done than's realistic, we just simply move those to, we can deal with these issues this week, and we're going to get back to these other ones next week. So there's a way of systematizing how to deal with let's say problems or things that are not ideal. We call them issues. And you just kind of chip away at them. So it's better to get, two or three things taken care of than get kind of paralyzed by overload and not do anything.
Yeah, I think that's true to most entrepreneurs and most businesses, right? But Chris, you just touched on how you would run, because you already run a digital agency. So what if, say, a business, I have no digital background, and digital is not my core competency, say, but I sense, because limited beliefs and symptoms, I sense that I need to do something. So how would I start to digitize some of my assets, because those assets are valuable? And how would I go about doing it? What's your
Yeah.
recommendation? How do you recommend your clients? So that's the process.
Well, I believe that the first and probably most important answer you already know. So there's an inherent understanding of what needs to be done.
Mhm.
So I would start there. What do you think you need to do first? So after we get that out of the way, we can be a bit more strategic or pragmatic about it.
Yeah.
And then we look at defining, well, what is the journey that your particular customer takes? So
Mhm.
obviously you need to know who that customer is, but how would they find out and engage and ultimately purchase and repurchase
Mhm.
whatever your product or service is? So that
Yeah.
usually comes in the form of some kind of diagram or write it down where we've got this kind of cohort and
Mhm.
they need what we have and here's how they go about their daily lives and maybe the cohort is often on some kind of channel or media or maybe they
Yeah.
watch TV or maybe they go to trade shows. You kind of define what they do and
Mhm.
then make sure that your information interrupts their journey. So they have a moment in time where they're paying attention to you and then they can link up the need for what you do to what they need. And ideally, I guess, your niche and your value is really well communicated.
Mhm.
So they need to trust you, they need to, be at the right price point, and they need you at a certain period of time. So
Mhm.
when we look at putting together a larger kind of strategic digital plan, those are the steps we follow. Who are your customers? What are their journeys? What are your resources and how much do you have to, let's call it advertise, but essentially interrupt them thoughtfully along the way?
Yeah.
And there's like, hey, I currently need my plumbing fixed. So what do I do? And there's either a sense of urgency or this is a
Mhm.
long-term project. So there's kind of two different journeys I might go on. In this
Yeah.
case, it's an emergency. So I've got to call a hotline and usually pay a bit more for that. If it's a
Yeah.
plumbing project that I can tackle next month and I can
Mhm.
assemble all the tools and go into YouTube and do some DIY,
Yeah.
that journey is now telling you where to put your advertising, let's say.
Mhm. Mhm.
Ideally, there's either a link to some kind of landing page or website or QR code where they can find out how to get a hold of you and how much things cost and how long it will take you to service them. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a good framework for that thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, I just have so much respect to entrepreneurs and business leadership team because running a business is not easy. And from what you just said, I kind of take it as well. Like a lot of times you actually know you have a problem. And a lot of business owners, they're problem solvers. But then you need to call a professional, a consultant, because people who does this all the time, like they can save you so much time, right?
It's
And
true.
that means cost, right? It's not, yeah, to your point earlier, like nobody does everything well. And on our mind, and we know that, oh, we have a problem, we need to solve it. We're problem solvers as well. And 60% of the time, you already know the answer. Don't always have the time to implement or to lead some initiatives yourself. And this is when you need experts, consultants who work in the area that you don't usually have that, I would say, mastery.
An example of that is we're working on a large project for a company called iRent, and they're one of the
Mhm.
largest multi-family home uh, tenants in Canada. So they have all these big buildings and people live in them.
Mhm.
But we're working on a project to help make their application process more streamlined. So when you go look
Mhm.
in an apartment and you love it, you can just kind of apply on your phone and go through all of that kind of paperwork and leasing information. And a
Mhm.
large part of their infrastructure is built on Salesforce, and we're Salesforce partners, but there's certain parts of Salesforce that's very specific and complicated. So in that case, we'll reach out to a partner, whereas we could do the work, take us 10 times
Mhm.
as long to figure something out. But to your point, there's a right person for the job. So we'll bring in a specialist and they get paid because they know exactly what button to turn, right? So I do think it's
Yeah.
spot on. Yeah.
It might take us a day to figure out. We will figure out how to turn on the button,
Mhm.
but for them, it's 5 minutes maybe.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that's
So that's really
cost as
valuable, right?
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 that's right. And when we talk about digital assets, they are content, but they can be process and they can be like the infrastructure and they can be the know-how. How do you distinguish between a digital asset that adds value and the one that merely consumes resources?
Interesting.
I wrote
Well,
down this question because I think this question is on the mind of business leadership as well. So,
sure. Yeah. Well, I
um,
guess you could filter that again back to having some sense of uh progress through some mechanism. We mentioned scorecards earlier. So if
yeah,
we hold on to that idea, then a valuable digital asset moves things along. It
mhm,
accomplishes something that's been predefined. So you
mhm,
actually know if it's of adding value or not.
yeah,
Um, I think we were chatting actually the other day through one of our other communities around the multiple amount of tools that we all have. And if that tech stack is a digital asset, well, maybe there's distractive assets. I don't know if we need an automation suite, a data enrichment suite, a
yeah.
CRM suite, like
Yeah,
how much
I
is
was smiling the
distracting
other
you?
day when you said that.
Yeah, so that's fun for folks that like to play with things and figure them out, but
Yeah.
it may be distracting, so to speak.
Mhm.
A lot of these social channels are built to distract and kind of keep you kind of swiping around.
Yeah.
So on one hand, that could be good for your business if folks are looking at your stuff.
Yeah.
Less great for your business if your resources are tied up and distracted, doing other things.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. I have my last question for today is about the levers. How do you move the levers closer to monetization? Because I understand, from business perspective, it depends on which stage you are at. Usually, the big corporations, they have resources and they have more room and more room to breathe. They can work on actually more tests and experiments. Before startups, usually they're in the survival mode. And my clientele sweet spot is mid stage, like the growth stage. Once you pass that survival mode, you have a bit room to breathe, but still, like you are too big to be small, but too small to be big. So monetization is still on their mind. Gonna ask for your insights on like what are the levers to move this digital initiative to monetization
Well,
or conversion, say.
yeah, that's a good way to put it. So, I'm a partner in a member-supported journalism brand. So we have
Mm,
independent journalism, editors, photographers, writers in Southeast Asia, and it's online content only, and we're member supported. So conversion is really important because we need enough to pay our team essentially. So for us, when we look at the levers to pull, we're constantly adjusting. We're looking at who kind of the cohorts are, if there's a change in the folks that are viewing our content. We
mhm,
also look at kind of what's going on at the moment. Actually, I think that's a great question in life and business,
mhm,
is to stop from all the stuff going on in your head. And if possible, just ask like, what is currently going on with all of the data
yeah,
available? So one of our insights was, hey, we're no longer getting viewership from United States academia. So most of our viewers at one point in time were in Southeast Asian studies, and a lot of
mhm,
memberships were being purchased by universities. We're like, hey, that's kind of drying up. When we
mhm,
took a look at our content, we said, what's going on right now? Well, our content all of a sudden had a real focus just on Cambodia, and we weren't covering the region quite as much. So we're like, hey, okay, we just needed that moment to reflect on what we were doing. So let's get
mhm,
more coverage on the entire region, which was part of our mission. And that way we're more attractive to that cohort that, basically funds us the best. So
mhm,
maybe just to wrap up that idea, I think to have regular checkpoints where you're not kind of obscured by bias and what you think is going on, and constantly kind of refresh your data to get a clear perspective on like what is happening right now.
Yeah.
That way, the market may be drying up and maybe time to innovate. Might be, maybe you got to, like at Dot Fusion, we just came out with a new product to
Mhm.
build lower cost websites as a service. So it's a
Mhm.
whole different department where we can do things kind of quick and easy, but still, nice and beautiful, just a
Yeah.
little less
I love that.
complexity. So yeah, we've got to stay nimble, I guess.
That's cool. I wrote several levers myself. One is that to focus on high performing content, because before you talked about the dashboard or the scorecard, and also from instinct, you actually know, what kind of content are your high performing content, meaning that they either convert people to go through your sales funnel, or they convert sales right away. So that's one type. And then optimize user experience, right? So you talk about interrupt with the customer journey. So as marketers, we use words like intercept, the touch point, how you interact with those touch points. So there are always things that we can find. And the third one is, to create a clear pathway. So, people talk about funnels. So you need to build, there are marketing funnels, there are sales funnels. So that's another point to move the lever and test and iterate. Chris, as you just mentioned, like sometimes, because things change and environment change, you have one particular cohort or segment, but they can become obsolete and they're no longer your customers. And in the case that you just mentioned, they're no longer your audience. Then we need to innovate for new things and look for new offerings. So test and iterate. That's
Idea.
another lever, I would say.
Awesome. Yeah, good points.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I was about to ask you if you have a case that you help the client move the lever. And Chris, I know that we worked on one project, and I know that you've got clients like, franchise business owners. In that field, what are you seeing? How do you transform, say, their digital practices? Can you give me an
Good question.
example?
Yeah, just kind of riffing on this franchise idea. So we just built a large website and mobile app for one of Canada's kind of premier pizza chains. And
This
they
project is
let,
launched, right?
yeah,
Cool.
they let their technology drift a little bit, which is normal. Every 5 to 7 years, you essentially plan an overhaul or a modernization of things.
Yeah.
And it really started with taking a good look at their customer and how they've changed over the years and the demographics and the behaviors of those customers. One of the key insights is that the customers, they want specials and promotions. And specials are really complicated when you're ordering pizza. You add some wings. Do you get like 2 for 1 or 3 for 1? Is there a family bundle? And so we really blew out the ability for the client to kind of create endless amount of specials. The specials are regionalized, so they can be different at one store to
That's
the
so
other. They
cool.
can be
Yeah.
different at
That's
can be different at their
capability
school.
enablement.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that
on
was
the
really
back end.
important. And there's also kind of trends to watch too. So it had been 5 to 7 years, and we take a look at what are the trends. Well, people are used to going to Starbucks or McDonald's, or in Canada, Tim Hortons. And what's a kind of a facet of all of those? Well, it's a rewards loyalty program. People like collecting
Yeah.
points and getting free stuff.
Yeah.
So we implemented a very kind of intuitive, fairly complicated on the back end points program, but now we can encourage people to come into a certain store that's underperforming at a certain point of time of day that isn't that great, and reward them a bit more handsomely than at other times of days. Or we can have a hockey promotion that's kind of calibrated with kind of rewards for hockey merchandise and that kind of thing. So knowing your customer, adapting to modern trends, I think is important. Yeah.
That's so cool. So I know our time is up for today. And
Oh
thank you,
man.
Chris,
All right.
so much for dropping by. And
Yeah.
until next
Good to
time.
drop by anytime.
Yeah, thank you. So until next time, keep aligning your digital assets to your business growth.
Good plan. I'm going to do that myself.
Cool. Thank you.
You got it.
Bye.